The numbers look good for Microsoft. Teams is getting an overhaul, and Gamescom is coming into focus. Happy Friday, friends. Happy Friday. It is hard to believe that July has come, July has gone, and it is now August. August is here. I had a birthday this week. Hit that subscribe button if you want to give me a birthday present. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, subscribe. I don't know. That's what you're supposed to do to make the little YouTube thing light up. Anyways, I had a birthday this week. August is upon us, and that is huge because that means we're back to school season is here. Gamescom is coming up. Microsoft is getting ready for the new fiscal year and starting to implement new things, and we've got a lot to talk about. So first off, the numbers of the day, because the tech news is right here and right now. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, Microsoft dropped earnings this week, and so they had revenue of $64.7 billion due. So that is for what we consider Q2 on the calendar, Q4 on the fiscal year, with a net income of $22 billion, and billion-dollar dues are going right into their bank account. That is astronomical numbers for Microsoft. They continued to do quite well. Their stock fluttered a bit because some of their cloud growth wasn't where it was expected, but considering the rest of the market, pretty much minus Apple, at least at this point, they did pretty darn well. Microsoft will live to survive another quarter. Microsoft 365 consumer subscribers grew to 82.5 million. Windows revenue increased 7%. However, devices and hardware, not so good for Microsoft, really. Devices, so which Surface dropped 11%, although I will be interested to see what happens in the following quarter because that will include the new Pro devices, a full quarter of the Pro devices, the Surface laptops, and the like. And so they do seem to be doing well, and we'll see if that is able to stabilize some of their hardware revenue on the Surface side, although Microsoft notes that they're really just focusing on higher margin products, and so the overall, they're not just chasing revenue anymore at this point, they're truly chasing margin as things move forward. Xbox hardware was down a catastrophic 42%, but they didn't launch anything, and we're pretty far into this current gen, and so again, that shouldn't be surprising, but 42% is just a big number. So Xbox hardware, if you don't launch anything, you're not going to sell more, and they're not cutting prices by any means. So yeah, that's kind of expected. Gaming revenue grew 44%. However, it was really down, I believe, about 4% because 48% net impact from the Activision acquisition. And so those are the big numbers that are coming up from Microsoft. Overall, just incredibly healthy as a company. And they're not going anywhere if anybody was surviving or questioning that. They are surviving, and they're not just surviving, but they are thriving. Xbox continues to be this interesting thing, which we'll get into here in a little bit later in the gaming section. But let's keep moving on because there's reported, according to Tom Warren over at The Verge, Teams is about to probably get the biggest overhaul, I think, since it's been announced. According to the report, it says that they're going to be combining some of their chat and channel functionality. So I'm a huge user of Teams. We at Stardock use it exceptionally heavy. We are completely organized by channels, and then we have obviously the chats. And so this is bringing that together. Well, I'm not going to until you see it and use it, it's not really worth getting hyped up about or concerned about in any way. However, Microsoft has for many years said this is how the product works, and changing up how the cheese, where the cheese lives, can have some big issues. So they got to be super duper careful because there's a cult-like following would be way overselling it. But people know how to operate Teams, and when you change how it operates, people get real nervous about that. And so we will see how Microsoft approaches this. And just because they trial it doesn't mean they'll ship it, although Microsoft seems pretty, head in the sand sometimes when it comes to shipping things lately. But we'll see. And speaking of shipping things, I mean more specifically this. So the new Outlook app is now generally available for business users, and it's still wonky. I wouldn't quite say it's good. I've complained a lot about the Outlook app, so have many people. There's known issues with hotkeys and just navigating around. They finally, I believe, got the spell check fixed. Hooray! They got spell check fixed. But there's just, power users are going to run into lots of little edge cases, and that really drives you nuts over time. I just have issues with multiple inboxes switching between it and using a back key and escape and things, and it lands you into different locations depending on how you hit it. And there's just a consistency issue that really drives you nuts. But anyways, Microsoft says it's here. They took off the new label, and so Outlook for all in the business world. Speaking of Windows 11, which we were not, but we are now, Windows 11 has crossed 30% market share according to StatCounter. It's inching itself up. It's just taking its sweet time. You know, they really make you kind of get new hardware, and we know the whole narrative here, but hey, it's over 30% according to StatCounter, which isn't perfect, but it's at least consistent. So you can kind of get some trending analysis definitely from StatCounter. And so there you go. Other interesting things that are happening, I think it was last week, we were talking about, hey, Bing is no longer able to index Reddit. Well, that's a pretty big deal, at least if you know how to use Reddit within like Google search. It's incredibly helpful to get actual humans and not AI bots, for the most part, information out of the search engine, because Google continues to kind of just, in my opinion, ruin itself a little bit with that search experience. And so Bing can no longer scrape Reddit, because according to Reddit, they were using this to train their AI, and they're like, hey, you got to pay us for that. So Reddit's sitting over here saying, if you want to scrape us, you got to pay us. And Microsoft over here saying like, look, they know it's free information. We should be able to do this anyways. And so it's a battle of, I don't know, quite titans. Microsoft is a titan. Reddit is definitely smaller than that. And I'm kind of, I don't, like, it annoys me that Reddit, like Bing cannot do this, right? Because Bing could be an alternative to Google, and you can't compete if you can't scrape Reddit. However, I get Reddit's point, because at the end of the day, what's the difference between a search index and an index that you use to train AI at the end of the day, right? It's all data. It's all human generated, at least on the Reddit side. And so, yeah, like, you know, Microsoft should pay up. We just talked about it. Microsoft put $22 billion in the bank. If they want to have access to Reddit's data, they have the capacity to do it. They just need to pay up. So other things that are floating around the net right now related to Microsoft is that Delta is going to go after, I should say, CrowdStrike and Microsoft to try to recover costs from their outage, which is they have reported up to $500 million. Now, the initial reaction from a lot of people is, why is Microsoft involved in this? Now, it was CrowdStrike's screw up, but obviously it was Microsoft's operating system. From a legal and discovery perspective, it is better to name both parties up front, right? Microsoft has a part in this. Whether or not they're liable is a different conversation, in my opinion. It's a different conversation, right? It was on Windows. It was a Windows screw up. Yes. Now, it's very tangibly related to a third party, and not intentionally, but a third party royally screwing up. And so the one thing to take away from this is not going to be solved anytime soon. However, Delta is going to go after them, and I guarantee you Delta will not be alone in this. They're going to have to figure this out somehow, and it might, I don't know if it will turn into a class action. Like, do you guys see like Delta and United and all these companies getting together to sue together and like get a class action lawsuit out of this? I don't think that's how it works. I'm not a legal expert on companies combining to sue other companies, how that all works. But Delta, I can almost guarantee, will not be alone. So CrowdStrike is going to start feeling some serious pain from this, and then Microsoft's going to be involved because it's like, hey, they need to be. Like the dark horse conspiracy theory in the back of my brain is Microsoft's like, yes, actually, please sue us. Please bring us involved, because then we can make the argument that we need the capacity to lock down the kernel, which was not allowed due to prior regulation to potentially avoid this. So like Microsoft can sit there and say like, look, this is what the law made us do this. The law made us allow these companies have access to this. Now, somebody could make an argument, and maybe that's what will happen out in court, is that Microsoft could have also built in additional protections. Yes, they have to allow this sort of thing, but they should have been able to catch sort of things, at least, you know, depending on how they look at it, which there is safe mode in Windows. So it kind of just depends on how Microsoft frames this and how the attack goes. But I think one of the results is going to be is that Microsoft will finally be able to lock down the kernel in a way that they want to, which gives them a competitive advantage. But we will see. We will see. This is going to take a long time to play out, is my guess. And there you go. Also being reported from Intel directly, not even being reported, Intel is going to be laying off over 10,000 employees after their latest earnings, and they're going to try to cut up to $10 billion in costs associated with those layoffs and probably other restructuring. Intel had a pretty rough quarter. Intel's been kind of on their heels even since Pat has taken over, although he took over, I want to say 2021? Does that sound about right? Somewhere where I can't exactly remember. It takes a long time to change and shift strategy when you have to literally build fabrications and that sort of thing. But they are going through a rough period, and they're expecting actually next quarter to be soft as well. I think actually I believe they said second half of the year to be soft as well, which is why these layoffs are happening. And so obviously condolences to everybody impacted, because nobody likes that. It's just not great stuff. So On to the gaming news, my friends, because there is gaming news. So NVIDIA's GeForce Now app will stop supporting Windows 7 and 8.1 in November. I can't imagine many people were using. Actually, if many people were, NVIDIA would probably continue to support it. But hey, officially being announced that, that's fallen off. And I suspect that some of that support was just like there's nothing stopping it from happening, but now they're probably making some sort of change, and then officially it's not going to work as well, and so they're not going to officially say that at the end of the day. Also, Bungie announced layoffs, 200 people, but that is not the headline that I have thrown up on the screen here. So Bungie has gone through a tough time. Things have not, again, landed as well as they had hoped either, and so Bungie announced that they are going to be laying off 200 people from various parts of their org. However, I'd like to bring up this headline from the Washington Post. I believe it's about 2 years old at this point, but it says Bungie leadership assures employees Sony deal will not result in layoffs or restructuring. But 200 people just got canned or are about to get laid off. So the moral of the story is your company will say whatever it is to get the acquisitions done, and acquisitions always sort of result in malfeasance, even if not direct. However, the inverse to this, and take everything with a grain of salt because it's hard to do the alternative reality. However, if you read the thread where some of the background about this information and these layoffs was discussed, it sounds like if Bungie wouldn't have been acquired, and after the recent results of all the Destiny sales, or I should say lack of sales, there would have been layoffs either way. So it sounds like Bungie may have a little oversold itself to Sony, but I mean, that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? Especially, it's easy to say that in hindsight. However, during the time when Bungie was acquired, Microsoft was gobbling up a bunch of assets, and so that raised and inflated things. And, the end of the story really just comes down to the people who get laid off are the ones who sacrificed the most and got hit the hardest. And so, it sucks. It just sucks. That's just, it does. It does. Other things that kind of don't suck. So Xbox will be going to Gamescom. That is not new news. However, they have really started to talk about what they will and also will not be letting you play. So you can play Aura, History Untold, Towerborn, Age of Mythology, and a few others. However, it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to play Avowed, the Shattered Space update or DLC for Starfield, and Indiana Jones. They will be discussed, but it doesn't sound like you will be able to play them, and hopefully we will get better clarity on the actual releases for the fall. There's been some talk that maybe things are being shifted around a little bit to give things a little bit more breathing room, because Microsoft does, or I should say Xbox does, have a pretty packed fall release, fall and winter schedule. So we will see if they come out and, give us some clarity on the actual schedule that many of us are expecting. Satya Nadella, during their earnings call, said this is one of the most content-packed pipelines or something to similar effect. And so, yep. Anyways, on to the questions, which are always my favorite part, and there's a bunch. So Ken drops in and says, how do you block spam on your personal email account? Somehow my primary account has gotten on some list or dozens of blah, blah, blah. Yes, Ken, it is a dumpster fire. I use Outlook. I do not use any other domains. I basically have two email inboxes. I have my personal Outlook, and then I have a work account. Work account does all right with spam blocking, but my Outlook account is horrific. And it's also partially my own fault because I have Brad at Outlook.com, and a lot of people use that for their random junk anyways. But we should compare, I've said this about 15 times, the ultimate goal for AI should be to build a good spam filter. That should be it, right? They should compare Copilot and Apple Intelligence and Gemini and all the other things, Anthropic and everything else out there, and say, just build a spam filter. That is all we want. Build a good quality spam filter that uses the AI, as they say. And it says, my second question is, do you use the new domains or go with Outlook.com or Gmail? So I guess technically I have three email addresses. I have a Gmail account that forwards to my Brad at Outlook that I have not used in a long time, but it's just, I use Outlook.com. That is just what I use at the end of the day. Mr. PKI dropping a question, his first of two questions actually is, are you using CrowdStrike on your systems or are you a Defender and avoided the outage last week? I will only speak on personal terms because exposing what Stardock does could be, I guess, OPSEC leak or something like that. Personally, I'm just using Defender and I avoided all outages last week. The Joe Finn says, Oh, this is a good one. What the heck is going on with OneNote? When they announced the classic app is becoming priority again, I thought that meant they were going to be making improvements and releasing new features. That hasn't happened in any significant way. Is the team just a mess? I think Microsoft's strategy, candidly, is a little bit of a mess. Right? Like, how much time was wasted bouncing back and forth between corporate initiatives? Now, this is the life inside of a giant corporate org, right? Like, you build an app that is not independently financially stable, and so when corporate comes down and says you got to do these things, like, it's like, if you want to keep a job, you're going to keep doing those things, because again, you don't make money. Like, nobody's out there paying a subscription purely for OneNote. I guess maybe I could be wrong. Maybe there's some subscription out there, but not directly, and not majority of people. And so they bounced around from frameworks and different things, and really all those things just fell away and went into the dumpster. And now we're back to just classic apps are fine. I'm sure there'll eventually be more WinUI 3 initiatives coming down the pipe for everybody else too. The thing with OneNote is it's a note-taking app, and it's a good note-taking app, and it's good. Trying to expand and compete with things is going to get dangerous, because you also have loops on the other side, Microsoft Loop on the other side. And so it's like, how far do you go? I'm surprised, honestly, that they're still investing in OneNote. I mean, they need to maintain it, make sure everything remains functional and loop components and that sort of thing. But I don't want to say it's a dead app. Like, you want to talk about a dead app, that's Skype, right? Skype just announced that they're pulling the advertisements from it. And let's just be real clear here. Microsoft doesn't have a rich history of supporting things it can't monetize. So I'm wondering if the days of Skype are coming to an end, and it'll just sort of fade away slowly, and eventually, like, we're shutting down Skype. We'll see about that. But I would say OneNote is more of a mess than on an articulated, clear plan for the future of the application. Mr. PKI dropping a second question of the week. Did I hear correctly on the Microsoft earnings call that they want to turn the Xbox into a subscription business? Did they not try that once before? So that's kind of a loaded question. They want Xbox to make money through subscriptions, but I don't believe they're going to turn the console and hardware itself into a subscription business. I still really wonder about the long-term future of the Xbox brand and the Xbox console. I don't think the Xbox brand is going away. Microsoft just dropped $70 billion into that org. They are not going to just be like, we're done. Like, that would be one of the biggest screw-ups in corporate history of any company of any size. That I don't believe is happening. I do wonder how the next-gen consoles are going to be, because it makes sense that Xbox becomes sort of an app. And someone's going to be like, well, they're just going to make it an app, and then they're going to kill everything. No, I don't mean that. But I mean, the differentiation between what a console hardware is and what a gaming PC is has contracted at orders of magnitude that we are probably expected, but it happened real quick, right? We went from things like a specific Nintendo that was a cartridge and all that stuff to, hey, it's just a fancy PC that sits under your TV running a hypervisor that probably could be put onto other devices. Granted, one of the things about Xbox is that it is a locked configuration state, and that is probably the biggest differentiator from just throwing it on a PC, right? It's Microsoft knows every single time what CPU, what the storage is, and nothing changes on that aspect. So if they can create a model where companies could build, Dell or HP or any of these guys could build a quote-unquote Xbox that just always has those performance characteristics for the next gen, then it might make sense. We will see. That would be a huge deviated plan from what we have seen historically. However, part of me just wonders, like, what if the next gen Xbox, and just hang on to your seats here for a minute, was a mid-powered thing, right? We've seen the Xbox Series X, we've seen the Xbox Series S. Microsoft has the data on which sells more. If Microsoft came out and said, look, we are going to do, the next gen Xbox is going to be a 1080p or 120 frames per second 1080p box, which honestly is fine. It sits under your console or sits under your TV. It's $159 or $149. And that's all we're doing. That's what we're doing. It's just I would buy it. I don't care. If someone's going to write it like, Brad's just not a great gamer because he doesn't want 4K 120. It's like, you know what? I just want a thing that I sit on my couch, I press the stupid button, it opens up quickly, it's silent, and it just works. That is what the gaming aspect is. I would, especially in a living room, I would challenge a lot of people to be able to sit down and say which screen is showing 4K and 1080p when you're sitting like 7-8 feet away. Yeah, some people are going to be able to see it, but you know what? Give me a 1080p box with HDR, consistent experience, locked frame rates for $150, and yeah, I think that thing would be a banger. So we'll see. I'm not saying that Xbox is going to go do that. They've been trying to get to there with the Series S, but I think it's starting to show that like these super high price point consoles just don't sell anymore, right? There used to be a market for that, and the market still exists. I shouldn't say it doesn't exist. However, it's not growing. So we will see. That really got off on a tangent, but I think a lot about what the next, because very clearly Microsoft has got to be planning for the next gen Xbox. We've already seen rumors about an ARM chip. We've already seen other things starting to float about. And so, yeah, we will see where Xbox goes after all that. Craig writes in and says, hey, Brad, do you know if Windows on ARM for the Surface and everything else is going to be updated at the same cadence as its x86 brethren? Good question. I believe it is going to be at... I'm going to say this and someone's going to be like, Brad, it didn't ship day and date. I believe it's supposed to be day and date, like, right, sort of it's Windows is just Windows is the mantra that Microsoft is trying to invoke upon society. A little large there, but that is what they were trying to explain. It's like Windows is just Windows now. Don't worry about what Windows is anymore. So I would expect all patches and all feature updates should be landing on ARM at about the same time they land on the PC side. So speaking of landing on the PC side, still waiting for that recall to show up. We haven't heard anything about it. I mean anything about recall showing up. So yeah. Anyways, folks, that wraps it up for this week. I'll be curious if anybody noticed where I had to splice in something. We had some storms come through when I recorded the first half of this podcast. So this is actually like a two-parter over a little bit of time. And so, yeah, I had to do a little splice and dice in there. Anyways, hopefully everybody had a wonderful week, and make sure to keep it subscribed here because the BS on this podcast is me.